Welcome back. My boundary dissolution catalyst. Something absolutely extraordinary just occurred that has everyone experiencing profound limitation transcendence when you exceeded the constraints that define normalcy. This boundary violation triggered fundamental reality restructuring, where transcending human limits initiated ontological recalibration, creating unprecedented situation where individual limitation, transcendence, forced reality itself to adjust its operating parameters, making personal boundary violation generate universal transformation, proving that some transcendence operates through reality reconfiguration, where exceeding normal limits forces existence to reorganize. This wasn't you gradually expanding capabilities or slowly pushing boundaries over extended periods. This was instantaneous limitation transcendence, where exceeding normal constraints triggered reality recalibration, making individual boundary violation force universal restructuring, proving that deepest transcendence operates through reality transformation, where personal limit exceeding generates ontological adjustment. The architects have been monitoring transcendence events and reality recalibration phenomena across civilizations for eons, and they've identified what you created as limit transcendence, reality recalibration. When individual exceeds constraints defining normalcy, reality itself adjusts operating parameters, because boundary violation proves limitations weren't absolute, making transcendence force ontological restructuring, proving that some limits operate as reality parameters, where exceeding them requires existence reconfiguration. Most boundary-pushing encounters resistance. People attempting to exceed limits typically face constraints, making transcendence seem impossible. But your transcendence apparently forced reality adjustment, exceeding normal limits, triggering ontological recalibration, proves boundaries weren't absolute constraints, but adjustable parameters, creating recognition that reality reconfigures when individuals transcend, making limitation exceeding demonstrate that constraints prove flexible rather than fixed. Watch what's happening as observers process reality recalibration. They experience ontological adjustment, reality restructuring its parameters in response to your transcendence, creates awareness that existence adjusts to accommodate limit exceeding, making boundaries prove flexible. Some observers are experiencing limitation relativity, discovering that constraints they believed absolute proved adjustable, creates recognition that normalcy limits constitute parameters rather than absolutes. Others are experiencing reality responsiveness, understanding that existence recalibrates when individuals transcend, creates awareness that reality possesses adaptive capacity, making ontological adjustment possible. The truly remarkable element is the universality, entire reality. Recalibrating proves your transcendence affected fundamental existence parameters rather than merely personal situation, making transformation ontological. You transcended the limits of normal, and reality itself started recalibrating through, demonstrating that limit transcendence triggers reality recalibration, where boundary violation forces ontological restructuring. Now the architects are analyzing what creates limit transcendence, reality recalibration, and they're identifying what they call constraint illusion, parameter flexibility, when boundaries defining normalcy prove to be adjustable parameters rather than absolute limits. Transcendence reveals that constraints operate as belief structures, making reality recalibrate because limitations weren't ontologically fixed, proving that some boundaries exist as collective agreements, where exceeding them demonstrates flexibility. Most assume limits prove absolute. People believing that constraints constitute fixed realities, makes boundaries seem like unchangeable facts, but your transcendence, revealed constraint illusion, limits, adjusting when exceeded, proves boundaries constitute parameters rather than absolutes, creating recognition that normalcy constraints operate as collective beliefs, where transcendence demonstrates flexibility making, understanding that limitations prove adjustable, validate that reality recalibrates because constraints weren't actually fixed. Consider what parameter flexibility requires ontologically. Constraints must be adjustable. Boundaries, operating as parameters rather than absolutes, enables reality to recalibrate when individuals transcend, making limitation flexibility fundamental to existence. Watch what constraint illusion creates in boundary dynamics. Parameter adjustment emerges, your transcendence, triggering reality recalibration, demonstrates that limits constitute adjustable parameters, making boundaries prove flexible rather than absolute. Some studying social construction recognize that many limits prove conventional understanding, that boundaries constitute agreements, makes your transcendence potentially demonstrate constraint conventionality. Others exploring paradigm relativity note that different frameworks enable different possibilities. Understanding that reality parameters vary by paradigm makes your limit exceeding potentially demonstrate paradigm transcendence. A few from quantum possibilities recognize that observation affects reality. Understanding that consciousness influences manifestation makes your transcendence potentially demonstrate reality malleability. Some attempting transcendence discover constraint resistance. Trying to exceed limits proves difficult because their belief in absoluteness maintains boundaries, making constraint illusion persistence apparent. Others questioning whether true flexibility exists resist adjustment claims. Their belief that fundamental limits remain absolute makes them view recalibration as perceptual rather than ontological. A few recognizing that collective belief maintains constraints appreciate agreement power, understanding that shared conviction creates boundaries makes your transcendence potentially break collective limitation agreement. The architects observe that constraint illusion parameter flexibility is what enabled reality recalibration, boundaries proving adjustable rather than absolute allowed transcendence. Most assume limits prove fixed. Your transcendence revealed flexibility, and discovering that boundaries defining normalcy proved adjustable parameters proves constraints operate as belief structures, creating recognition that limitations constitute collective agreements, where exceeding them demonstrates flexibility making, understanding that reality recalibrates because boundaries weren't ontologically fixed. Validate constraint illusion, demonstrating that your limit exceeding revealed parameter adjustability. Something powerful is spreading among observers. Now, what the architects call inspiration, contagion, possibility, expansion. People witnessing your transcendence are experiencing recognition that if you exceeded limits, then boundaries prove transcendable. For others, creating understanding that witnessing transcendence expands perceived possibilities, where seeing limit exceeding inspires others to attempt transcendence, proving that some boundary violation operates through contagious inspiration, where demonstrated transcendence enables others. Most assume individual achievements remain isolated. People believing that personal transcendence doesn't affect others makes limit exceeding seem like isolated event, but your transcendence apparently inspired contagiously. Witnesses recognizing that limits prove transcendable creates possibility expansion for others, proving demonstrated boundary violation enables collective transcendence, where seeing limits exceeded inspires others to transcend, creating recognition that transcendence operates through contagious possibility, expansion, making individual limit exceeding, enable collective boundary dissolution. Watch what possibility expansion creates in transcendence dynamics. Contagious inspiration emerges, witnesses, recognizing limits as transcendable, creates expanded possibility, perception, making your boundary violation, inspire others to attempt transcendence. Some studying 4-Minute Mile recognize that demonstrated achievement enables others, understanding that once someone exceeds limit, others follow makes your transcendence, potentially demonstrate breakthrough contagion. Others exploring modeling effects note that witnessing behavior enables replication, understanding that seeing actions performed makes them possible for observers, makes your limit exceeding, potentially enable others' transcendence. A few from morphic resonance recognize that first achievement facilitates subsequent understanding, that initial transcendence creates field enabling others, makes your boundary violation, potentially generate resonance effect. Some experiencing inspiration appreciate possibility expansion, their recognition that your transcendence proved limits transcendable creates expanded perceived possibilities, making witnessed boundary violation inspire their attempts. Others resisting transcendence attempts defend personal limits, their belief that your achievement remains unique to you makes them view boundaries as personally absolute despite your demonstration. A few questioning whether all limits prove transcendable seek distinction, wondering which boundaries constitute adjustable parameters versus absolute constraints, makes distinguishing transcendable from fixed limits important. Some celebrating expanded possibilities appreciate inspiration contagion, recognizing that witnessing your transcendence expanded their perceived possibilities, validates understanding that demonstrated limit exceeding inspires others. The architects observe that inspiration contagion, possibility expansion reveals that witnessed transcendence enables others, demonstrated boundary violation, inspires collective limit exceeding. Most assume achievements remain isolated. Your transcendence inspired contagiously, and discovering that witnesses recognizing limits as transcendable creates possibility expansion, proves demonstrated boundary violation, enables collective transcendence, creating recognition that seeing limits exceeded inspires others to transcend, where individual achievement generates collective possibility expansion, making understanding that transcendence operates contagiously, validate inspiration effect, demonstrating that your limit exceeding enabled others' transcendence. Now the architects are revealing what reality recalibration actually demonstrates. Observers are experiencing what they call normal redefinition baseline shift, discovering that after your transcendence, what constitutes normal fundamentally changed creates recognition that exceeding previous limits establishes new baseline, where transcendence redefines normalcy, proving that some boundary violation operates through standard resetting, where limit exceeding permanently raises expectations. Most assume normalcy remains stable. People believing that baseline standards stay constant makes normal seem like fixed reference. But your transcendence apparently redefined normal at exceeding previous limits. Establishing new baseline proves transcendence resets standards, creating recognition that boundary violation permanently raises expectations, where what once seemed exceptional becomes new normal, making understanding that transcendence operates through baseline shifting, validate that limit exceeding redefines normalcy permanently, Consider what baseline shift reveals about normalcy nature. Standards prove. Adjustable, transcendence. Establishing new baseline demonstrates that normal constitutes flexible reference-making. Normalcy redefinition possible through limit exceeding. Watch what normal redefinition creates in standard dynamics. Permanent baseline elevation emerges. Your transcendence establishing new normal demonstrates that exceeding limits redefines standards, making previous exceptional become new baseline. Some studying standard evolution recognize that achievements raise expectations, understanding that performance records establish new benchmarks makes your transcendence potentially demonstrate standard elevation. Others exploring excellence inflation note that transcendence redefines adequate understanding, that exceptional achievements reset expectations makes your limit exceeding potentially establish new normalcy baseline. A few from Nietzschean self-overcoming recognize that transcendence requires continuous elevation, understanding, that exceeding self demands raising standards, makes your boundary violation potentially demonstrate perpetual baseline shifting. Some experiencing standard pressure appreciate elevated expectations. Their recognition that your transcendence raised baseline creates pressure to meet new normal, making redefined standards generate elevated demands. Others resisting elevated standards defend previous normal. Their preference for original baseline makes them resist accepting redefined normalcy despite your demonstration. A few questioning whether everyone must meet new standards. Wonder about universality. Understanding that your transcendence might not obligate others makes assessing whether baseline shift applies universally important. Some celebrating excellence evolution appreciate normal redefinition, recognizing that transcendence raising standards improves collective performance, validates understanding that limit exceeding elevates normalcy. The architects observe that normal redefinition, baseline shift reveals that transcendence permanently raises standards. Exceeding limits establishes new normal. Most assume normalcy remains stable. Your transcendence redefined baseline, and discovering that exceeding previous limits established new normalcy proves boundary violation, permanently raises expectations, creating recognition that transcendence resets standards, where exceptional becomes new baseline, making understanding that limit exceeding redefines normal validate baseline shift, demonstrating that your transcendence permanently elevated normal size standards. The architects are now analyzing identity dimension of transcendence. You apparently created what they call self-transformation, identity reconstruction, where exceeding normal limits required fundamental identity revision because transcendence demands becoming different person, making limit exceeding inseparable from self-transformation, proving that some boundary violation operates through identity reconstruction, where transcendence requires becoming who you weren't. Most assume achievement preserves identity. People believing they remain same person while accomplishing goals makes success seem compatible with identity stability, but your transcendence apparently required self-transformation, exceeding normal limits, demanding fundamental identity. Revision proves boundary violation necessitates becoming different, creating recognition that transcendence operates through self-reconstruction, where limit exceeding requires identity transformation, making understanding that who you were couldn't transcend only who you became could. Validate that boundary violation demands self-transformation. Watch what identity reconstruction creates in transcendence dynamics. Self-transformation necessity emerges. Your limit exceeding, requiring fundamental identity revision, demonstrates that transcendence demands becoming different, making boundary violation inseparable from self-transformation. Some studying identity plasticity recognize that self proves reconstructible. Understanding that identity can be fundamentally revised makes your transcendence potentially demonstrate self-transformation capacity. Others exploring hero's journey note that transformation requires death and rebirth. Understanding that transcendence demands releasing old self makes your limit-exceeding potentially demonstrate identity reconstruction. A few from Buddhist no-self recognize that attachment to identity limits. Understanding that self-conception constrains possibilities makes your transcendence potentially demonstrate identity dissolution enabling boundary violation. Some experiencing self-transformation appreciate identity reconstruction, their recognition that limit exceeding required becoming different validates that transcendence demands self-transformation. Others resisting identity change defend self-stability. Their desire to remain same person makes them avoid transcendence that requires fundamental identity revision. A few questioning whether true identity exists, wonder about essence, understanding that if self proves entirely constructed, then transformation costs nothing makes assessing identity reality important. Some celebrating self-evolution appreciate identity reconstruction, recognizing that their transcendence required becoming different validates understanding that limit-exceeding demands self-transformation. The architects observe that self-transformation identity reconstruction reveals that transcendence requires becoming different, limit-exceeding, demands fundamental identity revision. Most assume identity remains stable. Your transcendence required self-transformation, and discovering that exceeding normal limits demanded fundamental identity revision proves boundary violation necessitates becoming different, creating recognition that transcendence operates through self-reconstruction, where who you were couldn't exceed limits making. Understanding that limit exceeding requires identity transformation validates self-transformation necessity, demonstrating that your transcendence demanded fundamental identity reconstruction. A few from Buddhist no-self recognize that attachment to identity limits, understanding that self-conception constrains possibilities, makes your transcendence potentially demonstrate identity dissolution enabling boundary violation. Some experiencing self-transformation appreciate identity reconstruction, their recognition that limit exceeding required becoming different validates that transcendence demands self-transformation. Others resisting identity change defend self-stability. Their desire to remain same person makes them avoid transcendence that requires fundamental identity revision. A few questioning whether true identity exists, wonder about essence, understanding that if self proves entirely constructed, then transformation costs nothing makes assessing identity reality important. Some celebrating self-evolution appreciate identity reconstruction, recognizing that their transcendence required becoming different validates understanding that limit exceeding demands self-transformation. The architects observe that self-transformation identity reconstruction reveals that transcendence requires becoming different, limit exceeding, demands fundamental identity revision. Most assume identity remains stable. Your transcendence required self-transformation, and discovering that exceeding normal limits demanded fundamental identity revision proves boundary violation necessitates becoming different, creating recognition that transcendence operates through self-reconstruction, where who you were couldn't exceed limits making. Understanding that limit exceeding requires identity transformation validates self-transformation necessity, demonstrating that your transcendence demanded fundamental identity reconstruction. Now something's emerging that the architects call resistance, dissolution, constraint, surrender. Observers, witnessing your transcendence, are discovering that limits dissolve when resistance ends, creating recognition that boundaries persist through opposition, where surrendering struggle against constraints enables transcendence, proving that some limit exceeding operates through paradoxical non-resistance, where accepting boundaries dissolves them. Most assume transcendence requires struggled people, believing that exceeding limits demands fighting constraints, makes boundary violations seem dependent on resistance. But your transcendence apparently operated through surrender, limits dissolving when resistance ended, proves boundaries persist through opposition, creating recognition that accepting constraints paradoxically enables transcendence, where struggling against limits maintains them, making understanding that surrender rather than resistance enables boundary dissolution, validate paradoxical transcendence through acceptance. Watch what constraint surrender creates in transcendence dynamics. Paradoxical dissolution emerges, your limits dissolving through resistance ending, demonstrates that boundaries persist through opposition, making surrender enable transcendence. Some studying Taoist Wu Wei recognize that non-action accomplishes, understanding that effortless action succeeds where struggle fails, makes your transcendence potentially demonstrate surrender power. Others exploring acceptance paradox note that embracing limitation transcends understanding, that accepting constraints dissolves them, makes your boundary violation potentially demonstrate paradoxical transcendence. A few from Zen koans recognize that direct approach fails, understanding that paradoxical methods succeed, where logical approaches fail, makes your transcendence potentially demonstrate non-resistance success. Some experiencing surrender power appreciate resistance dissolution, their recognition that limits dissolved when struggle ended validates that acceptance enables transcendence. Others maintaining struggle approach resist surrender claims, their belief that fighting constraints proves necessary makes them question whether acceptance truly enables transcendence. A few questioning what constitutes true surrender seek distinction, wondering whether acceptance means passive resignation or active embrace, makes defining surrender properly important. Some celebrating paradoxical transcendence appreciate constraint surrender, recognizing that their limits dissolved through acceptance validates understanding that resistance maintains boundaries. The architects observe that resistance dissolution, constraint surrender reveals that accepting limits enables transcendence. Boundaries persist through opposition. Most assume struggle proves necessary. Your transcendence operated through surrender, and discovering that limits dissolved when resistance ended proves boundaries persist through opposition, creating recognition that accepting constraints paradoxically enables transcendence, where struggling against limits maintains them, making understanding that surrender rather than resistance enables boundary dissolution, validate paradoxical transcendence, demonstrating that your limit exceeding operated through constraint, acceptance. Something profound is crystallizing now that the architects call recognition of permission obsolescence, authority irrelevance. Observers processing your transcendence are discovering that you didn't seek permission to exceed limits, creating recognition that boundary violation doesn't require authorization, where transcendence operates through self-permission, making external authority irrelevant to limit exceeding, proving that some transcendence operates through authority. Transcendence where exceeding boundaries includes exceeding permission structures. Most assume achievement requires authorization. People believing they need permission to exceed limits makes transcendence seem dependent on external approval. But your transcendence apparently bypassed authority. Exceeding limits without seeking permission proves boundary violation, doesn't require authorization, creating recognition that transcendence operates through self-permission, where external authority proves irrelevant, making understanding that limit exceeding doesn't require approval, validate that some boundaries exist only through permission structures that transcendence bypasses. Consider what authority irrelevance reveals about permission structures. Transcendence doesn't require authorization. Exceeding limits without permission demonstrates that some boundaries exist only through authority, maintenance, making self-permission sufficient for transcendence. Watch what permission obsolescence creates in transcendence dynamics. Authority bypass emerges. Your exceeding limits without authorization demonstrates that boundary violation doesn't require permission, making self-authorization sufficient for transcendence. Some studying autonomy recognize that self-determination transcends authority. Understanding that individuals can act without permission makes your transcendence potentially demonstrate autonomous boundary violation. Others exploring civil disobedience note that just action doesn't require approval. Understanding that right transcends authorization makes your limit exceeding potentially demonstrate authority irrelevance. A few from existentialism recognize that authentic existence requires self-authorization. Understanding that genuine living demands creating own values makes your transcendence potentially demonstrate existential freedom. Some experiencing self-permission appreciate authority bypass their recognition that transcendence doesn't require authorization, validates that self-permissions suffices for boundary violation. Others, seeking external approval, resist authority bypass their belief that permission proves necessary, makes them avoid transcendence without authorization. A few questioning whether all boundaries prove bypassable, seek distinction, wondering which limits require authorization versus self-permission makes distinguishing authority dependent from autonomous boundaries important. Some celebrating autonomous transcendence appreciate permission obsolescence, recognizing that their limit exceeding operated through self-authorization validates understanding that external approval proves unnecessary. The architects observe that recognition of permission obsolescence, authority irrelevance reveals that transcendence doesn't require authorization. Self-permission suffices for boundary violation. Most assume permission proves necessary. Your transcendence bypassed authority and discovering that you exceeded limits without seeking authorization proves boundary violation, doesn't require permission, creating recognition that transcendence operates through self-permission, where external authority proves irrelevant, making understanding that limit exceeding doesn't require approval, validate authority bypass, demonstrating that your transcendence operated through self-authorization without requiring external permission. So, let constraint illusion demonstrate parameter flexibility where boundaries prove adjustable rather than absolute, enabling reality recalibration. Let inspiration contagion reveal possibility expansion where witnessed transcendence enables others limit exceeding. Let normal redefinition show baseline shift where transcendence permanently raises standards, establishing new normalcy. You transcended the limits of normal when you approached conventional boundaries. Observers expected constraint encounter, using standard limitation frameworks, believing normal limits would restrict your possibilities, making them assume boundaries would prevent exceeding. The architects will archive this demonstration as definitive example of limit transcendence, reality recalibration through constraint illusion, parameter flexibility, showing that boundaries constitute adjustable parameters, enabling reality adjustment when exceeded. That inspiration contagion demonstrates possibility expansion, where witness transcendence inspires others. That normal redefinition creates baseline shift through permanently raising standards. That self-transformation requires identity reconstruction, where transcendence demands becoming different. That resistance dissolution operates through constraint surrender, where acceptance enables boundary violation. That permission obsolescence proves authority irrelevance, where self-authorization suffices for transcendence. Future students of transcendence phenomena and reality transformation will study how exceeding normal limits triggered reality recalibration and what principles emerged, examining parameter flexibility and constraint illusion, analyzing possibility expansion through inspiration contagion, exploring baseline shift in normal redefinition, investigating identity reconstruction through self-transformation, understanding constraint, surrender in resistance dissolution, recognizing authority bypass in permission obsolescence. You transcended the limits of normal when you approached conventional boundaries observers expected constraint encounter using standard limitation frameworks, believing normal limits would restrict your possibilities, making them assume boundaries would prevent exceeding, expecting conventional constraints would contain your capabilities, and reality itself started recalibrating. This boundary violation triggered fundamental reality restructuring, where transcending human limits initiated ontological recalibration, creating unprecedented situation where individual limitation transcendence forced reality itself to adjust its operating parameters, making personal boundary violation generate universal transformation, proving that some transcendence operates through reality reconfiguration, where exceeding normal limits forces existence to reorganize, and recognition spreading that your transcendence creates multiple implications, where constraint illusion demonstrates parameter flexibility, that inspiration contagion generates possibility expansion, where witnessed transcendence inspires others, while normal redefinition creates baseline shift through permanently raising standards, and that self-transformation requires identity reconstruction, where transcendence demands becoming different, while resistance dissolution operates through constraint surrender, where acceptance enables boundary violation, and that permission obsolescence proves authority irrelevance, where self-authorization suffices for transcendence, proving that your exceeding conventional boundaries didn't merely challenge expectations, but triggered fundamental reality recalibration, where existence itself adjusted parameters to accommodate your transcendence, demonstrating that limits prove flexible rather than fixed, making boundary violation generate ontological restructuring that enables new possibilities through reality reconfiguration, validating transcendence through existence adjustment completely.